Sanji Chudan Soji Chonaham La Chanju Pardo Dane Chapsu Che Dage Jinso Jiber Sanam Che Rola Penchir Sanji Drobar Sho Sanji Chudan Soji Chonam La Chanju Pardo Dane Chapsu Che Dage Jinso Jiber Sanam Che Rola Penchir Sanji Drobar Sho Sanji Chudan Soji Chonam La Chanchu Pardo Dane Chapsu Che Dage Jinso Jiber Sanam Che Rola Penchir Sanji Drobar Sho Simje Tamje Dewa Tan Devi Jodan Dembar Churji Dungar Dan Dungar Je Jo Rohar Churji Do Mebe Dewa Tamba Tam Mend Chadan Dan Charve Tanyom Chembo La Nebar Churji Chomden de jambe yang lai chan sai lo kange lo dre nye chen zhe nye dara nam da rab sarve chi nye tun gun chi chen si ji ni che tok len bam zi kanda si be zhen re ma ri mun du me dong re chi sarve zho zo gun la pu jie dar zi yan la chu ju yang den song zhu dar che zho nyu mo ni long le che cha zho zho zi che ma ri mun se dong re nyu go chi ni chun zi ra zhen nam de ne da jian sa ju tar sun yun ten lu zo ger se tu yu go ju ra ju dang ju ni jin da lu mun se ren jian be yang la du ze den ju ji chen ra bu zi re che da lu ten mo men ba ra san Gadang Ding Ju Shung Lu Do Ba Ye Lo Zhu Bo Bian Hang Wa Zar Tu Sor.
Good afternoon. So this morning we started to review the practice in 7 parts, and we saw the part on homage, on offerings briefly, and the practice of purification, sometimes translated as confession, the practice of confession or repentance. The next part is the practice of rejoicing in the merits of others. So here, when we spoke about the 4 immeasurables, we spoke about joy, as you remember. This kind of is linked to that, or comes close to that. It is to feel contentment, satisfaction before an act of virtue, and by joy here implicitly includes like an improvement. We could also rejoice in negative acts. As I had explained before, with regards to an act, we can distinguish, for For example, an act that has a karmic act that has a consequence that was committed but not accumulated, accumulated or committed. For example, someone else. Okay, today I'll take an example. One has to be a little careful of we are kind of flooded by news, and so we see conflicts going on in the world, and when this news is presented to us, they are generally presented with a side being taken or other, and in one hand, it is somehow aimed to make us react in a certain way, to approve or to reject or what have you. Somehow we're invited somewhere in some way to participate in an activity. For example, we can imagine a war that takes place. Of course, we have the feeling that one is the victim and the other is the bully. And of course, then we take sides, and maybe in a subtle way or in an explicit way. It depends on who we are. We may notice or not. We can say, "Oh, that's good. That's well done. They're nasty. They were right to destroy them." I mean, we could rejoice in that way. You know, it is rejoicing where somehow we approve. We vet it in a way. We're satisfied with what is being done. So that is the practice here, but for a positive object. Maybe I took the wrong example. It is not towards something negative, but towards something positive. For example, to bring this to the point on karma, we can commit an act deliberately, and once this act is deliberately committed, we can rejoice in it, and this act will fully carry its consequence, its fruit. Then there are other acts that we commit, but they weren't committed deliberately. They were done by accident. For example, I was walking and I walked on an insect, for example. We killed. That's that act. But it wasn't deliberate. It wasn't motivated by a will. It was an accident. And then there are other people who can commit positive acts or negative acts, and we can learn about them or find out about them, and we can kind of participate in them by approving them, or we can act approving of them, or we can ask other people to fulfill acts on our behalf. So there are many different situations. So there are deliberate acts, committed, and we say accumulated. It means that we've fully acquired the consequence of this act. If it wasn't deliberately, and it was done by accident, and when we realize we regret it and we want to repair, then certainly it is an act that has been committed but not accumulated because we didn't want it deliberately. In other circumstances, it might be an act that we haven't committed ourselves, but we've asked someone to do on our behalf because I wanted it. I undertook a certain number of actions for this to happen. But it isn't an act that I've committed indirectly. And also, I I will acquire the consequences of this. It is an accumulated act. So, for example, sometimes if we take one activity, depending on the number of participants and the amplitude of the act can vary, whether it be positive or negative. But just by participating, I'll take a negative example, and forgive me for this. Maybe 1 million people have been killed. I didn't go to the front, but I still kind of participated in some way, whether it's through funding or my efforts. Somehow I participated in the killing of this 1 million people, and I have gained the karma of having participated in these. And in another situation, maybe I have I haven't participated at all, but I approve of it. And in the same way, I acquire the consequences. So this is an example of something I didn't do anything, but in my mind, I saw all these horrors, and I was happy about it. So be careful, because there one has also accumulated. The consequences. So this can be applied, of course, when we speak about virtue. We speak about the virtue fulfilled by the bodhisattvas, the Buddhas, the Shravakas, the Pratyeka Buddhas, as well as all sentient beings. Whatever beneficial or virtuous, positive action that they have accomplished, I approve of them, and I rejoice in them. So what does this do? There is the aspect of joy that dissipates all jealousy, because we could say, oh, such a practitioner practiced better than I did. They're more advanced than I am. I can feel jealous towards other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. But here, there is this joy, this approval. We no longer have this jealousy. And through approval and joy, I participate in this activity, and I will accumulate the same merit as they have. They have accomplished these acts, but just by participating in them through my rejoicing, I gain the merits of it. So there's a story from the life of the Buddha. The Buddha had been invited by the king, Prasenajit, if I remember well. And there was a meal that was offered to the Buddha and his disciples. And at the end of the meal, the Buddha had asked the king if he wished, as was the custom, that he express a dedication in the name of the one who had given, thereby the king, or the one who had accumulated the most merit through offering this supper. So the king said, but I was curious, but how could someone have accumulated more dedication, more merit than I have, since I offered this supper? But there was a baker in front of the palace who, knowing that the Buddha had been invited, had rejoiced and had aspired to enlightenment. And this joy wasn't stained by any kind of pride or wish for recognition. And simply by her joy, she acquired more merit than the king himself, who would actually offer the supper. So this is the practice here that we are that we can do, that we are asked to do. We can apply this in our everyday life towards one another. For example, it is part of the four immeasurables to rejoice in the joy of others, in particular, in the happiness of others, in particular when it comes to virtuous acts, and therefore acquire a positive disposition and indirectly participate in these acts and accumulate their benefits. And then we think of the great accomplishments of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. There is always this image of the infinity of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in an infinity of worlds, in an inconceivable space. And the merit is inconceivable. And all these virtues, all these benefits, I rejoice from deep in my heart. And in this manner, I create meritorious dispositions in my mind stream. So earlier we spoke about different dispositions that prevent us from reaching enlightenment, and in fact these practices are an answer to that. So what prevents? Why haven't I reached enlightenment? Why didn't do what I shouldn't have done? I did what I shouldn't have. I didn't do what was supposed to be done. Towards what is virtuous, I saw it as a rivalry, an obstacle. I didn't know how to join in it. I didn't know how to rejoice, etc. So all that was an obstacle. So this practice transforms this disposition and, on the contrary, creates a disposition to truly orient ourselves towards enlightenment. And particularly what we can rely on to go towards enlightenment. And here it is bodhicitta. It is this is the sincere motivation imbued with love and compassion towards all sentient beings without exception, which is oriented towards this extraordinary fulfillment of perfect enlightenment for all beings, and which also aims at the enlightenment of all beings, the ultimate good for all beings, and is committed to in a conduct that is vast to accomplish this, and accepts all difficulties with joy, no matter what it represents. And so these are some of the characteristics of bodhicitta in the conventional sense. Ultimately, bodhicitta is none other than the realization of wisdom. That is, to discern reality as it is. That is, actualize first partially, then ultimately in enlightenment, the natural state of our mind. And so today, in confusion, not having recognized the natural nature, the nature of our mind, we orient bodhicitta towards this. We take the disposition to see, to catch a glimpse of the natural state of our mind, which is imbued with love and compassion. So bodhicitta, in the ultimate sense, is the realization of emptiness, which is inseparable from or is unified with great compassion. it is inseparable from wisdom. So we wish to actualize all these practices. It is not something maybe in the future bodhicitta will arise. If we do these practices correctly, then bodhicitta will really surface, will really be manifest. And if bodhicitta is manifest, then we become a bodhisattva. We become an heir of the Buddha, a son or daughter of the Buddha. For like a child who was born in a royal family or son of a king, even if he doesn't know how to read or write or do anything, just because of his filiation, he is destined to become king. And like today, if I can't concentrate, my discernment is imperfect, I have many afflictions. But just because I have applied to what is kind of nearing enlightenment, as long as I don't turn away from it, there is no doubt that eventually, progressively, I will eventually reach Buddhahood. Or the bodhicitta guarantees to carry me to enlightenment. If I can authentically generate bodhicitta and I maintain it and I never turn away from it, then invariably I will be brought to a perfect enlightenment. So the way not to be led into mistake, to embark on a harmful path for myself and other, it is the attitude, the orientation of mind that is beneficial for myself and for others. And on relying on this, I journey towards enlightenment. So all these practices are made to progressively actualize bodhicitta in its sublime expression, its ultimate expression, which is none other than enlightenment. Is it clear? Then there are 3 practices that follow. One is to turn ourselves, requesting the Buddhas for something. We address ourselves to the Buddhas in infinite number. It is a request that we make. We pray the Buddhas to turn the wheel of Dharma. This means that they give us access to the reality, that they teach Dharma. That is reality, so that we may understand the reality of our mind beyond any confusion. Why do we do this? That for the enlightened ones to be manifest, many enlightened ones reach enlightenment, but no one makes a request for them to teach, and so they don't teach. So here it is a means for the enlightened ones to give all of us the opportunity to participate in the activity of the enlightened ones. What is the activity of the enlightened ones in essence? It is to give access to reality, to give access to the natural state of mind that is beyond all suffering. That is the teaching of the Buddha is none else than that. The teaching of the Buddha does not ask us to believe in fictions, in affabulations, and all speeches. All speeches are some, or all discourses are some form of fiction or of description. The ultimate essence of the Buddha's teaching is beyond all description. It is the ineffable. It is inconceivable. That's why it's sometimes said that the Buddha never taught anything, because he never expressed any kind of fiction. He was established in reality, and he gave access to the real, to what is real. But this access to reality, but according to the dispositions of those around him, have their own perceptions of the enlightened ones according to their in accordance with their dispositions. But the enlightened one has never been troubled by any kind of fiction. He is beyond any kind of elaboration or fiction. He didn't teach in the common habitual way, which is like a theory, a conception, a thought, which are all fictional in their reality. There's no substance to it. Inherent substance. So to come back to the practice, I address these Buddhas who have reached enlightenment, but who have not yet expressed their activity, and I entreat them to express their activity by turning the wheel of Dharma, to teach the Dharma, to give access to this. And by this request, the Buddha who will accomplish or fulfill this activity, how do we measure the merit of such an activity? For us who are not enlightened, nor and who have not really who do not correctly perceive reality, and who are troubled by our fictions, but nonetheless we can still participate in the activity of the Buddhas. The merit of this is immeasurable, because the Buddha's activity can lead an infinite number of beings to free themselves from suffering. And just by my simple request, I have enabled this immense activity, that I have enabled millions of beings from reaching beyond suffering. So the merit of this is immense. And so Buddhas, through their compassion, have enabled us, allow us to make this request, and to therefore to participate in their activity, and therefore to accumulate a lot of merit. So we could ask ourselves, why wasn't I in the presence of the Buddha? Why didn't I directly hear the teaching of the Buddha? It is because I did not have the disposition in me to hear this, to hear the teaching. And this practice of the request remedies this obstacle in me, and also makes me receptive to the teaching of the Dharma. Then there is the next practice, requesting the Buddhas to remain, not to enter parinirvana. So generally speaking, this is part of the Buddha's activity, to enter into parinirvana. It's important the teaching of a Buddha, it is important that it be put down, be recorded, and that the disciples who remain, it is possible that they don't continue this practice. So there are many reasons why a Buddha enter parinirvana, but if they enter too early into parinirvana, it's also possible that too many beings may not be able to profit from their teaching, from their presence. And so the wish is that we make the request to the infinity of Buddhas who have decided to go into parinirvana, not to enter immediately into parinirvana, in order that they may help all beings. So that's the sixth practice. And the last one is that in the 7 parts is the dedication. So everything we've just done, so to remain in the logic that I presented earlier, why am I not enlightened yet? I didn't do what I should have done. I did what shouldn't have been done. And above all, when I did something positive, I, in a way, lessened it, stained it by not having dedicated it. Usually when we do something, let's say positive, we develop a certain pride. We appropriate it. We are attached also to the positive consequence. Like some practice generosity because they know that generosity, the consequence of generosity is prosperity. So generosity is we're attached to the prosperity that the generosity will bring. So like all the previous practices could be stained in the way that I fulfilled them because I'm attached to the benefits it can bring to me. So we see here how the attachment to the I, to the self, or how the self can kind of slip in here and find a way of being present and lessen the practice. So here the idea is that we're appropriated, we're attached to the positive consequences. We appropriate them. So all the virtues that I've just accomplished through the practice of homage, offering, confession, rejoicing, the request to remain, no matter what merit there may be in all these practices, I give it to all beings. I share it with all beings. I dedicate it to the enlightenment of all beings. If there is a positive effect of the acts that I've just accomplished, I don't want the benefits just for myself. I want the benefits to be beneficial to all beings without exception. And how can this be? It is that they produce a temporary benefit, but above all, ultimate benefit, that this practice bring all beings to enlightenment, ultimately. So this is the last part. So it is an attitude that characterizes bodhicitta. We are disinterested. There is no expectation for oneself. There is a Tibetan term, hwaksam, which means an attitude, a superior attitude that is disinterested, marked by loving and kindness towards all beings. I am able to act that is completely free from all imperatives of the self, free of attachment to the self, an activity that is completely beneficial and disinterested. So once we have done this dedication, there are the wishes that I formulate. And this is the aspirations themselves. And that's the main part of the practice here. It is all the wishes that we make. And as I said earlier, these wishes become like a force that accompany us for today, that transform us, that orient our mind differently, and that accompany us from life to life until the fulfillment of these wishes. And these wishes enable everything that is formulated. We make these wishes, not that they manifest by just randomly. We formulate them because we have acquired the merit that we spoke about earlier, and that we will continually practice with. It is not as if this practice in 7 parts or 7 branches we only do once. It's the same with the wishes. It's not just something that I express now. I aspire that these wishes be always present in me, that I formulate them now and in my future lives, and that my mind be oriented in this direction, in the aim of accomplishing or fulfilling these wishes that are presented here. May the Buddhas of the past and those dwelling presently in the worlds of the 10 directions be honored by offerings. May those yet to come swiftly fulfill their aspiration and attain Buddhahood through the stages of awakening. That's the first stanza, the main part. There are several wishes made here, expressed here. We start here with the specific wishes of the bodhisattva, the aspiring bodhisattva. From the moment we've generated bodhicitta, relatively in its aspect of application and aspiration, then begins the path of the great vehicle, and this path is divided in several parts. The first part is the path when we equip ourselves with knowledge and merit, and we call it sometimes the path of accumulation. And then accumulated with that, we apply ourselves to the practice. And when our contemplative practice progresses, we enter into the path of junction. And here the essence of the practice is discernment, wisdom that I was talking about, recognizing the natural state of our mind. And so here the progression happens on the basis of deeper and deeper realization of this reality, of this emptiness. And I'm not going to go into the subdivisions of these paths. So the path of junction or application leads us to the path of seeing. And the path of seeing is the direct vision, the perfect, we see reality perfectly, of the ultimate reality of our mind and of phenomena. And this realization is cultivated through the path of familiarization or meditation practice. And then there's the path beyond study, beyond learning, which is enlightenment. So the bodhisattva's aspiration is, above all, is mainly in the first two paths. We haven't yet realized ultimate bodhicitta. We become a bodhisattva at the path of seeing. Before that, we are, or the path of vision. Before that, we are an aspiring bodhisattva. The two first paths. We have wishes or vows here that correspond to this level of practice. So these are wishes linked to motivation. It is samba. It is we formulate a beneficial motivation. These are wishes that correspond to this motivation. Here there are 3 points. First, we make offerings to the Buddhas of our merit. May the Buddhas of the past and those dwelling presently in the worlds of the 10 directions be honored by offerings. May those yet to come swiftly fulfill their aspiration and attain Buddhahood through the stages of awakening. So all the merit that we've accumulated, we dedicate it to the enlightenment of all beings. But here we make more specifically our offering to the Buddhas of the past, of the present, that we have envisaged in unmeasurable, infinite number, as we saw, an infinity of worlds. We make this offering, and we offer it to all the Buddhas who are to come, who are not yet Buddha. May this merit enable all those who are not yet Buddhas to progress towards enlightenment and accomplish or realize enlightenment. So here we would specify that the merit that is offered is the merit that we have accumulated through the practice in 7 parts or 7 branches. But it's not limited to that. It is, but it is the merit that we have accumulated in the past, that we are accumulating in the present, and the merit that we will accumulate in the future, right here and now, I already direct it to this offering. So even before I've accomplished them, I've already made a gift of them. I've already offered them. So here we think of the Buddhas, the present Buddhas. May my merit please the Buddhas, make them rejoice. May these offerings be made to them not just for one moment, but constantly, continuously. So we also make the wish that these offerings of merit be continuous. So here we offer our merit to those who are enlightened and those who are not enlightened, and I aspire to this in this life and for all my future lives. So there is this aspiration applies to all the other wishes that we will see throughout the prayer. Maybe you wish to discuss. Do we need some time for questions? So maybe rather than continue in the text, I will stop here for this time. I'm sorry that we didn't go further in the text itself, but I hope that the explanations that you heard will help you in your practice and your understanding of Dharma. And so let's take a little time to discuss if you have questions or some clarifications that you're looking for regarding the different things we spoke about. There's something that's churning in my mind. You said yesterday morning. This morning you spoke about the psychophysical elements. Yesterday you spoke about Bardo. So I imagine that you learned the word physicalist. So I imagine that I'm a physicalist. Rinpoche says, well, many of us are. There's quite a strong tendency in the West. So the question goes on. In the state of Bardo, you also spoke that all phenomena are codependent. In the state of Bardo of death, what is the support of reification or identification? Well, the identification, says Rinpoche, is the illusory. It doesn't have a support. It doesn't have an equivalent. When I say I, when I grasp the I, the other, for the I and the other to be substantively independently established, their entity, their independent entity has to be, you have to be able to observe it. But this grasping or this clinging has no equivalent. That's why we say it's fictitious. We're thinking of like a monster in the cupboard, but there's no monster. We're thinking about a being like a single entity, autonomous, independent, but it's not observable. So, but I can't stop from thinking it's physicalist, but when I speak, there's something that vibrates. There's a membrane that vibrates. It says electrical signals to the brain. So at some moment, like we have to speculate that at the moment of death, something remains without this support, without this. But I can't envisage something of consciousness that works without something that underpins it, something that supports it. So we're obliged to speculate. So the answer, we have quite a set idea in terms of matter that we can observe. It's easier for us to attribute it as substantiality, is something that is independent, whereas what we call phenomena that come from the mind can seem as an epiphenomena, but we have to position ourselves in another perspective. This conception is just a conception, an idea. It's true that in what we experience, every physical phenomena, every visible phenomena, something we hear, that we smell, what makes it manifest? And who knows it's there? Well, it is consciousness, mind. And so after that, when you look in detail, how are these appearances formed? Visible, hearing, olfactive. These are gross aspects of consciousness. They are constructed, of course, by the physical support, conditioned co-production. But that's just the functioning. It doesn't show that we've found a part that exists independently of the other substantively. If the phenomena really had a reality in and of itself, they could have separate timelines. Today we talk about the immensity of the universe that goes from billions of light years. But all the past of the universe, in some ways, it doesn't exist. All the future of the universe doesn't exist yet. The reality of the universe, this extremely vast space, is simultaneous with this moment, and this moment it is simultaneous with my experience. Because otherwise it wouldn't be accessible. So if it's not accessible, how do I know it's there? What I know is happens at the same time, is simultaneous with the mind. So this immensity cannot be separated from the moment of consciousness. So it is appearance. So the rest is our ideas. It's not something that I observe. If I say, oh, matter produces this or that, I haven't observed it. It is an idea. It is how we become attached to the idea. We reify the idea. In our intimate experience, at every instant, at every moment, I have a body, there is a world, not because it is because they are appearances which I experience. It doesn't mean to say that they have a reality in and of itself. It is inseparable from the reality that is making the experience. We can never observe the mind independently. It's not an idea. You can observe it. Observe every moment, every instant. To follow up on what was just said, is it not another way to go to our physicalist tendency? By taking the experience of other people, there's some things we believe or don't believe. We can be in contact with people who have had contact with someone who has died, and the person who has died, the brain is no longer there, it has been buried or eaten. But if we were physicalist, this consciousness, what the dead person can transmit, cannot be passed along. But if we think that consciousness is an epiphenomena of the mind, an epiphenomena of the body, then it couldn't be there. So there could not be any contact with the dead. But so Rinpoche says, yes, it's true, but for some that could be true, but others might see it as a hallucination. So, you might believe that you see extraterrestrials, but it's a hallucination. So I have had this experience of a person that doesn't know someone else, and the person so this is someone who sees about the question was about someone who sees in the life of someone else, of another person who he or she has never met. So Rinpoche says, yes, to be the advocate of devil's advocate, well, to speak of past lives or to know that the mind is not produced by body but had a previous life and have another one after. Regardless, with regards to this question, there are many observations that are evoked that I didn't speak about. For example, we can observe when children are born, they have dispositions, they have characters, they can have the same parents, or they can even be twins, have the same education, but they have dispositions that are different. Where do these dispositions come from? Is it something that just happens like that without a cause? It is because of having had cultivated this disposition. They couldn't have developed them in this life, so it has to be in another life. You have, I didn't evoke it either, but you have children or persons who have the souvenir, the memory of a past life. For most of us, death is such, I was going to say traumatic event, but it has such an impact on us that most of the time there's an amnesia and we don't remember at all a past life. But some people die prematurely, or sometimes you see many people who can remember when they die prematurely, or they have been assassinated, or the dispositions of their past lives are very present, and so the amnesia does not is not complete. So there are some children who are born with very precise memories of their past lives, and who we are even born sometimes with physical marks. There was a professor of psychology at Virginia University, Ian Stevenson, who I had met, and he had studied thousands of cases of these souvenirs, and he wrote a book. There was the cases that fascinated him were those who remembered, like, for example, people who remembered a brutal death, and they carried these birthmarks. That corresponded to the scars, you could say, to the marks of how they were killed in their past lives. So some children were born with bullet marks, or some of they were born without a finger because a finger had been cut, or marks around the neck of being strangled. So there were birthmarks that reflected what they had gone through, and souvenirs. And recently I saw 2 children in Burma, or Myanmar, we say today, who were born anyway, there's a special term. They could remember of the language of their previous life, and these 2 children had a relationship in their past life. They had been Japanese in their past life, and they knew Japanese. They were born with the memory of this language, and they spoke to each other in Japanese. Nobody knew this language in the village where they were born. So there are cases like this, and there was also the story of this was quite fascinating. There was a young Sri Lankan man who became a Buddhist monk, and he remembered texts that he recited. He could recite all these Buddhist sutras by heart at birth, really young, without having learnt them. And what was really curious, that his way of reciting didn't correspond at all with the way these sutras are recited today in Sri Lanka. And I can't remember exactly all the details, but there was one part, a few sentences, it made him laugh when he read those parts. And in fact, when they looked at the case and studied the text, his way of reciting the text corresponded to the way of it used to be recited. And it was linked to a funny story in the text that it was forgotten afterwards. So there were astonishing things like that. And he could remember having been a monk many centuries before. So there are many stories that are fascinating like this. Of, for example, of children who identified the executioner of their previous life, the murderer, and they accepted by the judge because they brought their proof that the children had their parents in this life, but young they found the parents from their previous life. So there are stories like this that are incredible. I don't have a very good memory for all these stories, so I can't give them in detail, but if you do a little research, searches, you'll find it. So these are kind of practical cases that evoke what you are saying. There are some people who can say that they can speak to dead people and who know details that nobody else knows. This happens. So some might be wrong, some might be right. I don't know exactly. But there's no other explanation. I remember Ian Stevenson and the late Jean-Pierre Schnitzler from Montchardon, and who wrote a book about it that you could find on this subject on past lives. And he asked, as a psychologist, he asked the question: where do these memories come from? If the can the memories of someone who has died be absorbed by a child? But he had a lot of theories, but none of the theories could be verified. But if the evidence was that is that the continuity of this person. There's no other explanation than that. No better explanation than that. So there's a lot of evidence. It's not irrational. It doesn't correspond to some kind of fantasy to conceive of this idea of past lives and future lives. It actually corresponds to reality. Whereas to think that the mind is born as an epiphenomena produced by the body and matter is something that has never been proven. There's no evidence of that. It is just science doesn't prove it. Doesn't even pretend to prove it. It is kind of some presupposition that has been erected into a doctrine, a rational doctrine, and it's not well seen to think otherwise. And there's a kind of a social pressure here. And all the discourse, when we talk about life, implicitly it comes back to this presupposition. So when we study biology, history, sciences, etc., never do we call that into question directly. We kind of we never really produce the evidence. It's like an indoctrination. It's insidious. It doesn't have a foundation of an effective proof. Thank you for your teachings. My question is different. It can be linked to the King of Aspiration prayers, where on every atom there are an infinity of Buddhas of the three times, without limit, unlimited. Also, I think in Buddhism there is no consequence without a cause. My question, from a Buddhist point of view, on the Big Bang, the presupposed, what is called the Big Bang, the so-called Big Bang at the origin of the universe, because all of a sudden there's no cause, there's a consequence. And I know that quantum physics is asking this question, that the Big Bang would have been the result of a previous Big Bang, which is kind of what's expressed in this prayer. There's no beginning, no end. The mind precedes matter. What is your feeling on this? The teaching of the Buddha is quite ancient, so I don't think the terminology of Big Bang was present at that time. So I've never seen any reference in my readings directly, Buddhist readings, to this notion of Big Bang. But that being said, what is evident is that there is a primary cause. A first cause, a primary cause that was in the theory of the Big Bang. It is an explosion, an expansion that is it's conceived as an initial moment. And I think the very fact that we conceived this, because it's a theory, simply reflects our instinctive conceptualizations. We see things as having a beginning and an end, things as existent. So we don't call into question our reification. So reification implies that there is a beginning, a middle, and an end. So that reflects this idea. But it's the idea that there's something without this something having had itself a cause. So the something that resembles that would be the theistic theories of a creator, that there is a creator, a God who is a creator or a creative force. So in the Big Bang, there's no God. It's a creative force, initial creative force, which is without a cause, which itself is without a cause. So it reflects this kind of notion. It reflects this religious notion. It assumes that there's an entity that holds in and of itself. We talked about an entity that would exist independently of causes and conditions. We don't know how it could produce, because produce means that it changes. So the fact is that an entity that depends on nothing has never been observed. It's like a nothingness. These are mental constructions. They are representations that we make, but we can't observe it. So regarding the idea that you've evoked, that you brought up, that the Big Bang would have had an antecedent, another Big Bang, this comes closer to cosmological theories that we find in India, of cosmologies that we find in India, of enormous cycles, like a phase of manifestation of the universe, and then a phase of presence, of maintenance, and then a phase of decline, of destruction. And this phase of destruction becomes the conditions for the emergence of another phase of manifestation. And we don't see it. We don't see any beginning. And then, so of course, here we're simply conceptualizing we're speculating on the becoming of what we conceive as an independent reality. But from a Buddhist perspective, the external phenomena are appearance. They are manifest by conditioned co-production, but they don't have anything inherent existence. They have never come into existence. They haven't been created with substance. There's never been real creation, genuine creation. It's all appearance. So the origin of these appearances is in and of itself speculation, ideas that don't have any real pragmatic use. We should see it at our own level, concretely. I have these appearances. Why do I have these appearances? Why? What are my dispositions? These are things that I can act upon. How does the world appear to me? How do I? Is it pleasant, unpleasant? How do I live in the world? This is very much linked to my personal dispositions. So the reality of phenomena is not completely independent from this mind that experiences it. If it were truly independent, we could never be separated. We could never undo it. For example, sometimes you prick someone and they feel nothing, and some people even they only see the needle and they already start shaking. So how can something that we experience, if it is present, unpleasant, it depends above all on our mind. Not because something in and of itself is established as pleasant and unpleasant, or as it appears. How things appear is constructed by our mind, and if we look for its autonomy, its this is why it is emptiness. Because we will not find it. We will not find it its inherent character. So from the point of, for Buddhism, the beginning of samsara is the moment of being led astray, where we did not recognize the natural state of our mind. That's when appearances begin. If we recognize them, then there is freedom. When you say, like, our mind is a succession of thoughts, when we say succession of thoughts, that means that one thought follows another. So if I go back in time, for there to be a sequence, there has to be a starting point. Why? But how can there be a suite or a sequence if there is not a first point? Maybe it is the first moment that you talk about when we are led astray. When we talk about a sequence or a suite, a succession, it's not in the ontological sense of the term. It is we are speaking from a phenomenological point of view. We have a succession of experiences. But it's never been established that it was with an entity. If we cannot find what is the moment that doesn't move, that is, the instant that doesn't move, that is. For there to be a continuum, for there to be a multiple, there has to be a unit. So if we can't find the unit, how can we find the multiple? Or a succession, or the succession, which is none other than a multitude. What we call a suite means, or a sequence means many units that come one after the other. So if in a first moment we can't even observe the unchanged substantial unit, how could there be a multitude of them? So it is through experience that conventionally we can talk about this matter, but it's not for that that we can deduct ontologically that I know the substance of beings. It is constituted by irreducible units of present time. And so it is something. There we've reified the mind. So if it's something, it has had to come into being, but it has never been. But it is never not been. Neither inexistent, neither non-existent, neither both is established. So understanding the reality of phenomena and mind can only happen through reifying. We have to see the limits of this and conceptualizing, how conceptualizing is a way of altering. Of representing in an erroneous way. So beyond this, erroneous representation, is reality something that we can observe? Yes, we can observe, but not in the duality of a subject and an object. Because even for us, observing implicitly is that there is something that observes something else. So there is a reality that is beyond this duality, and that is unique to the mind, the capacity of knowing this consciousness, this luminosity, this cognitive capacity that enables cognition and consciousness, that there is that something is not and is nothing. This capacity of luminosity knows itself. It can see something else. And in this quality of knowledge, there is something non-dualistic. It is non-dualistic knowledge. In consciousness, there is not one aspect that is subject and object. There is duality. And this constitutes the basis of all experience. So when we talk about seeing a subject distinct and a distinct object, that is a construction, a fictitious construction. Thank you for all you've given to us. When we try to act well and that we run into a conflict, the person who is before us is not necessarily wants to have the upper hand, does not have the same approach as us. So how do we choose in terms of act, not act, just let someone walk all over us? And then the situation escalates. And I've lived through this situation. I didn't want to get into the aggression and say, no, stop. So I tried to round the edges. and then that leads to my defeat, my loss. So at some moment or another, I'm going to have to act, but it's not going to be. It's going to be sanctioned. It's going to be. And if there's a moment of when there is no more equanimity, can you give some guidance, some on this? Thank you. Well, I don't know all the details of your story, of your case, but I think it's important to see the share. First of all, you have to weigh. Really recognize how harmful hatred is and aversion. It always ends badly. It will always harm us when we make this choice. So here we have to weigh it. I mean, am I losing more by fighting? Or am I losing more by letting the other have the upper hand? There. So that's a choice we have to make. And we have to measure in with as much lucidity as possible. And to help you a little bit with this, to see that discontent comes from our representations, how we think about things. There's a citation from the Dharmapada. I was abused. Someone took advantage of me. I was insulted. As long as I think this way, hatred will not dissipate. But then there's the other part of the sentence says, if I don't think this way, then hatred won't touch me. Hatred will dissipate. So hatred has a fuel. It is to think, oh, he did this to me, or they said that, he looked at me this way, or they looked at me this way. All these thoughts are the fuel for hatred. So what people often do in terms of how they behave, it's our interpretation. I don't know if you've noticed. At the moment, there's work being done in my place. There's like hammering, and it's so noisy. But I don't get angry. They're drilling away. But often when a big truck comes in front of you, or the thunder makes your house shake, you don't get mad because you don't attribute an attention. But if someone whispers an insult, we get angry. And yet the noise is less harmful. It doesn't destroy our ears. So maybe it's not very pleasant, but we can endure it. And so that this other noise that is in its appearance is like soft to the ear, but destroys my heart. Where does it come from? It comes from how I cling. So it's the level of discomfort that we feel comes both from the behavior of the other and our way of interpreting this, from our clinging, and that's our action. And so if we don't want to feel sadness, maybe we have to drop that aspect. And if then there's another aspect, Sometimes, often conflicts it's the Kadampa master, or Kadampa minister said, for an arrow to reach you, it only reaches you if you wield a target. So something reaches you or hits you, it's because somewhere you've created a target. So every conflict is codependent. There are always two parts. It's all never completely the fault of one person, and we are completely innocent. And sometimes, by accepting or by giving and saying, okay, there are situations that can seem insurmountable, but we manage to surmount them and to transform the situation in a situation that is favorable by a positive act, by a positive attitude, by the fact of giving. Just let the other have what they want. So then one's aggression doesn't have anything to grip onto. And then you free yourself from so many other problems. So otherwise, the problem of conflicts is that there's never ending. Oh, you did this, and then, okay, I'm going to do this to you. There's no end. There was a film like that, I can't remember. Anyway, it was about a couple. They had a beautiful house. They didn't get along anymore. The War of the Roses, it was called. And it ends, the house is destroyed. So they could have figured out their problems. So no one wins in the end. So you have to weigh it out. And then the choice is yours. Thank you. I think that we are going to conclude for today, for this time, for this weekend. I thank you very much for your attention, for your effort to have come, to be present. I hope that our time together will be useful. And I hope that in the close future, I think, I believe in September, we will meet again to continue the study of this text. And meanwhile, I wish you all much success, health, and all the best. And may you deepen your knowledge of the Dharma, put it into practice in your life. And to conclude, I invite you, if you wish to join me for truly put into application what we spoke about, and to dedicate whatever the merit we have developed, acquired through study and reflection on Dharma. May this merit contribute to peace in the world, to well-being of all beings, and ultimately to enlightenment of all beings without exception.
Merci. Oh, pardon. Oh, merci à vous.